Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's sitting on his floor. I'll tell you why in a second. I'm going to be reviewing the album Unearth by Hozier. Hozier? I intentionally did not look up how to say his name, just so you can try to tell me in the comments. But the reason that I'm reviewing Hozier is there's a couple reasons. But the main reason is that my daughter has just been going on non-stop that I have to review Hozier. Hozier? Now she says it's not for her, so she's a junior in high school, but she says that all of her friends love Hozier. All of them. They all put on his new album, they listen to it, they talk about it, and that in order for me to be, really fulfilling the goal of this channel, to be connected to new music and taking all art seriously and all that stuff, that I do all the nice things that I try and do on this channel, I need to take it seriously. If for no other reason than to have her friends laugh. And I think a friend's father in Oregon is a fan of the channel and a fan of Hozier. So this is for you, friend's father in Oregon. Maybe Washington State, somewhere up there, somewhere in Twilight Country. So, I'm starting off poorly, right? I don't even know how to pronounce the guy's name. But as you can tell from the run length of this video, which I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't edit my videos. It's going to be long, though. I'm taking this album very seriously. I'm not learning how to pronounce his name because and you'll learn this if you're not old yet, like I am. If you're not in your 30s, 40s, there are just these artists that pop up and you're just sort of vaguely aware of them. They sort of are these little niggling sounds in the back of your head. And you're sort of aware that they exist, and you might sort of know their genre. You might know one of their songs or you might not. And in particular, there's a kind of white male rock person. And I'm going to say a bunch of names here, and I don't think they actually all go together. But I'm talking Mac DeMarco and John Mayer and Ed Sheeran, just these names of just dudes. And then you look into their albums, and it's just the dudes. But then the dudes have a band, and they have 8 producers, and they make stuff that's rock adjacent. I don't know. It's hard to figure out. Now, at the same time that there are these sort of major acts like that, like Ed Sheeran, that are sort of rock-ish, pop-ish, pale superstars, you have sort of the indie version of it, which I'm much more familiar with. We're thinking King Cruel or the now disgraced Rex Orange County, where it's sort of the same idea, pasty rock stars that are just one person that are also a band, except it has sort of this cool veneer to it, this less poppy, less mainstream, less MOR, middle of the road. So I don't know how to pronounce Hozier because I've never talked. I'm a 45-year-old male. I don't think I would have any occasion to have a conversation with anybody about Hozier. Okay? There's a political aspect to this album, which is very important, which I'll talk about later. But essentially, I'm stuck here. I don't know what part of Ireland he's from. It turns out he's not from Canada. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And even after listening to his album once or twice, I couldn't quite figure out where I sat on him. And I realized part of it is that, how is he perceived? And usually I try to review music without thinking about what other people think, but this will actually help me to better understand this music, which at times is divine and soaring and emotional, and at times is so painfully middle of the road that I want to turn it off and then throw my phone out the window and then drive over my phone forever playing me this mess, okay? That's the kind of way that I go. So what did I do? I went to my community page and I asked my auditors, my viewers, what do you think of Hozier? Basically, I was trying to get the sense, is he taken seriously and treated as a great up-and-coming artist or already here artist like King K. Rool or King Cruel? Or is he a sort of semi-has-been pop Good Morning America Ed Sheeran? I tried to create a spectrum for my fans to tell me, and it turns out those were 2 pretty good names. It seems as though most people's interpretation of Hozier is in between those 2 things. And I do actually apologize for those of you who are super fans and you hear me mispronouncing his name every other time, or maybe every time. I'm kind of regretting my decision not to learn how to pronounce his name, but I find it funny. I'm trolling you. So these are your answers. I'm not going to read all the answers. I got like 30 answers about how is he perceived, but it does help me to contextualize this album and put it in the greater context of pop music and rock music in 2023. Sertankien said that he was Bjork-like, which I thought was interesting. It's an interesting idea. Someone named User explained that the way that Hozier is interpreted is through the filter of someone who was popular in the indie world and then had a big overplayed hit. But he still insists he's in high school and everyone is bumping it. I didn't know his big hit, so I listened to it. It's called Take Me to the Church or Take Me to Church. And yo, that song is terrible. God damn. Whoa, if I had heard that song before, I never would have listened to this album and enjoyed it. But this ripoff of Otis Redding's Amen, just don't you touch Amen. Do not touch, just don't touch Amen, okay? That's all, that's, anyways. And then the voice is like, he has this beautiful voice, and I know that now from listening to this great album. And Unearth, Unknown, Unreal Unearth is a great album. Okay, so while you're sitting there mad that I'm crapping on Take Me to Church, he does have a mode of his voice which is very Imagine Dragons. Stop. I, Professor Sky, defend Imagine Dragons all the time. I understand why people hate on them. I understand why people crap on them. But I think they've written a lot of great songs. I think they have an interesting sound. I don't think they are to blame for why rock and roll is dead. I think they are to blame for people not liking their stuff. But that's it. But still, that's not what you want in a voice, right? Bryce Benioff sort of, in an interesting way, pointed out something which is why I'm sitting on the floor, which is that he is one of the more thoughtful artists in the genre. Now, that's an interesting way to put it, Bryce, because what genre is it? That's the other issue that I have with this. I mean, that's what we're in now, right? Music crickets are boring people who are constantly trying to find ways to pigeonhole stuff in a way that's easily digestible, but ultimately flattening. And genres are the easiest way to do that. So you say, oh, it's thrash metal, and it's thrash metal. Oh, it's dubstep, it's dubstep. But as we move on to the 23rd century here, we're like just getting rid of all these genres. So I don't know if Bryce meant that he's the most thoughtful in rock, if he's the most thoughtful in indie, if he's the most thoughtful in folk, if he's the most thoughtful in pop. The genre does not fit here. Harry McElroy says that his hate is very unwarranted. And I found this one interesting by Lowell W. Sometimes it feels like his fans don't even exist. By the way, my daughter swears to me that I'm going to get so many hits, so many views of this video. So if that's true, smash the like bucket, show me that I was right to review this and that my daughter was right, and that my daughter's friends and my daughter's friend's dad in Oregon was right. I really hope that guy's watching. Be like, that's me. I mean, I'm in Washington, but that's me. But anyways, so those fans are mad. He has almost 30 million monthly listeners, but it feels like no one has him as his favorite. So that's the question, that it seems as though there's a dichotomy in the way he's perceived. He is simultaneously a totally anodyne, just blink and you miss it, nobody's favorite, who cares, middle of the road, nobody. And on the other side, as Chendi says, he's the male Taylor Swift with dedicated stans. And it does seem that that's the other side, that he has a very, very strong fan base. So if it's possible to be both nobody's favorite artist and many people's favorite artist, it seems as though that's what Hozier is able to do. It would help if I knew what kind of name it was, because it's not French, I don't think. Hozier. Anyways, Joe says that if King Cruel were more popular and Ed Sheeran was more universally respected, that would be Hozier. John Willis says something, and I'm going to come back to this. I think this is very accurate. Weezer is his best musical comparison, culturally speaking. Both have a kind of punchline and musical acts that most people have heard of, a few hits, but with an incredibly dedicated fan base that swear by their music. Much like Imagine Dragons, I really support Weezer. I mean, I support Weezer more than I support Imagine Dragons. But definitely, Weezer does, like, that made a lot of sense. Like, that really helps me to better understand, because I remember Weezer from in the 90s, but if I was just experiencing Weezer now, it would be quite different. Parkle's Men says, well is perceived as well performed, but ultimately hollow folk pop. Now that's interesting. Hollow folk pop. It's not hollow, but we'll get to that. But then the most common responses I got, as a fun, go and read the comment section. Ethan Lamar left a very funny comment on there that's worth reading. Is this lesbian thing, which I didn't anticipate. Okay, mind you, you are watching the reviewer who reviewed the Girl in Red album, and I never said the word lesbian once. I didn't know. I'm a 45-year-old guy, right? I don't know that that's some kind of secret code. I released it, and everyone's like, "Sky, how did you?" Like, I don't know. She's just a great musician. I don't need to classify her as for certain people, and I'm not one of those people. But this is apparently a thing. Leo says, very popular in Ireland, a very largely queer fan base, makes lesbian music love songs as they're deeper and more touching than an average man's. Engaging Athena said a god amongst men, an honorary lesbian for his intense yearning for women, and many other people said the same thing. So that's another interesting aspect. I would like to push against it because it's unfortunate that in order for people to be... If you're a male and you are kind and thoughtful, passionate towards women, that makes you a lesbian, I mean, that's fine. I don't mind. I guess I wouldn't mind if people called me a lesbian, but I feel like that's not very aspirational for men. If the standard is so low that it, anyways. But finally, the best suggestion came from Loops, who said, if you are going into his music blind, keep an open mind. It may or may not work for you. And that is the truth. I did go into this with an open mind. I went into this understanding that there's going to be things I like and things that I don't, and that's the angle that I'm approaching it. So thank you to everyone for commenting. Please respond in my comment section, what do you think about the things I just said? The thing I really have a hard time with, a couple songs on here only have like one producer and only have one writer. Most of the songs have a ton of writers and a ton of producers, and I just don't know. Like, is he a machine? Is he a part of a system? Is there some A&R in whichever island he's in, telling him what to do? Or is he just like a very great musician who writes his own stuff but gives credit to people very freely? Kind of like Taylor Swift does, right? Like simultaneously writing all his own stuff but simultaneously taking a lot of input from others. I don't know. Obviously, the center of everything is his absolutely gorgeous voice. There are many times on this album where I felt that aching joy of his music, and I understand why people must really relate to it super strong. I'm not sure if the music around him really lives up to the level of his voice. I don't know. I don't want to say it's bland because it's too well produced and too well worked to be just called bland. But there aren't really hooks. There aren't that many parts that I want to go back to and listen to, like that part, that part. It sort of ends up being sort of a wash. One of my favorite things is that he takes himself seriously. He takes this whole thing seriously. He's a very serious and very high-quality lyricist. I mean, he doesn't repeat a ton of his lyrics. He doesn't write silly ditties. He seems to be working at a very high level as a lyricist. And that must be even greater than his voice are these lyrics. I do wonder if he doesn't suffer from Bradpittitis. That's where hot guys who are like smart, people think they're smarter than they are just because they're so hot. You're just like, well, I mean, look at him. It's sort of especially if you are a handsome white male, people tend to take you more seriously. Not to be arrogant, but I have benefited from this in my life as well, where sometimes I'll realize I said something that isn't that smart and people take it seriously. I'm like, oh, damn it. Stupid colonized existence, I can't quite tell if he's as smart as he thinks he is, but in the little short bits of interviews that I saw, it doesn't seem like he's thinking that he's super smart. He doesn't do the Brad Pitt thing of just like talking and, just like, all right, dude, you're hot and good job, Anyways, the main thing that I love about this album is that it's a big swing. This is not a grind fest for the streaming services. This is not just someone just pumping out 35 songs and 10 of them are love songs. No, this really is a dedicated concept album to getting out of COVID through the lens of Dante, through the lens of the Divine Comedy. So, my father died in February, and we divided up all this stuff, and I ended up with this crazy Dante collection. So this great bust, which belonged to my grandfather, this collection of the illustrated Dante by Dali, Salvador Dali, and it's actually kind of nice because back in 2021, my dad knew that I was interested, you know, kind of living the literature life, and there is his Christmas gift. For Sky loves Zappa. We called my dad Zappa, and that's a version of Dante's Inferno. So it's kind of a fun, and actually he also gave me this huge, which I'll bring out later, this huge copy of the Inferno as illustrated by Gustave Doré, the great French illustrator. So I've been in this sort of Dante mode, and all summer I've been reading my own copy of the Divine Comedy. I'm about halfway through Purgatory now. Everyone just reads the Inferno, but the rest of it's quite good. So it's been fun reading and rereading the Divine Comedy, and it's an interesting. We'll talk about it, okay? I assume that if you're here and you know I'm a professor, you know I'm going to take him to task. You know I'm going to praise him. You know I'm going to actually take this intertextual moment seriously. Intertextuality means when art refers to another piece of art to give context or to be a reference. The term was coined by Bulgarian-French thinker Julia Kristeva. Let's give people credit when they come up with a very important word. So, I'm going to give you an example song. Before I do, I want to remind you that if you type in the letters A-V-A-A, I will guarantee give you a heart on your comment. That's just a way to give you a permission structure. If you like what I'm doing and you want to support me, but you feel nervous about leaving comments. I know I don't leave comments half the time. So you just put that, and I'll put a little heart on there, and I'll be psyched. That stands for awesome videos always. I'm going to be adding a new one. If you're mad at me, just type in the letters MISS, which stands for Make It Stop, Sucker. Because there's 2 songs on this album which are a miss. This is a new term I just came up on in this video. Make It Stop, Sucker. There's 2 songs which are so freaking bad, and not only bad, but that I actively despise. I hear them and I want to go, I want to open up a drawer, I want to get a pencil, I want to break the pencil because I'm so mad at how much I hate those songs. Okay? So you can say AVAA or miss, smash the subscribe button, smash the like bucket, do all that stuff, okay? My algorithm's coming back. Show my daughter that she's right, that my channel can be saved by Hozier? Oh, is it like Hosea? Josiah? Hozier. So my example song, you can click above Dante's head over there, is the song Who We Are. So it starts off with this nice kind of piano, right? Sorry, I have to do something on my stupid computer here. So, it starts off with this piano, and the microphone sounds a little far away, which is nice. It doesn't sound super clean, the production. It's nice. Almost reminds me of the melody of Where's My Mind. Almost reminds me of, Imagine, or sort of a John Lennon solo thing. But there's this great minor note at the end of the phrase. Sometimes there are these little songwriting details which are really quite nice. And his voice is just beautiful. It's just angelic. He's got a voice for the Paradiso. Okay, he's got a voice of an angel, not the voice of someone who's constantly biting off someone's ear, frozen in hell. Very hard to parse lyrics, and the thing is, and this is what I think it is, and this goes for a lot of acts. You just have to buy in. You have to lower your cynical edge, because if you want everything to be cool and edgy, I only you're not going to enjoy Hozier. But if you're open-minded and you kind of buy in and you just say, listen, this might not be the exact kind of music that I usually enjoy listening to. This is the kind of music that I engage with, and if I can just give in to the beauty of his voice and the interesting nature of this guitar writing, I can forgive it for not being cool. Because often the term cool is reserved for what young, pretentious, arrogant white men like. I'm looking at me, okay? This is self-criticism. This is not criticizing you if you are young, edgy, a white male, okay? But that's usually what coolness is referred to. So an artist who appeals to a more female fan base, especially if it's a younger female fan base, is dismissed outright because of patriarchy, okay? So y'all enjoyed Barbie. Ken does not rock with Hozier, okay? And Ken is wrong for that. That's not in my script. That's really stupid. It's okay. Like the production on here, it's a little color by numbers, like it builds up. Like a lot of the stuff starts the same way. It starts quiet and then builds up and the drums come in the chorus or whatever. But it's just this great lyricism. To hold me like water or Christ, to hold me like a knife. Really powerful stuff, just the idea to be held like water, which is hard to hold, but it's a life-giving, powerful essence, but then to hold like a knife, and like that's much more tangible, and you can imagine how to hold, but it implies violence, It's a great lyric. It's not a good lyric. It's a truly great lyric. And then it builds into this chorus, we were born at night, so much of our lives just carving through the dark. That's a beautiful way to describe human existence. He's really doing it. He's really doing a lot of things that people try to do with their lyrics, but he's really doing it. To get so far, and the hardest part is who we are, it's who we are. That this struggle, that this state of sort of eternal ignorance and blindness is actually who we are as human people. Now, Genius, because I reviewed this album a little bit late, there's a lot of stuff written on Lyric Genius, which makes me happy. I want to get the idea of being born at night, starting in complete darkness. But still at the same time, he maybe is overly anchored to love songs and breakup songs and relationship songs, because this ends up being, we ran out of steam and we were living someone else's dream. And it feels to me like maybe it's too much lovey love stuff, but the layers on the second verse are beautiful, some kind of bell, extra guitar. There's a lot of these artists that I'm going to say that are artists that I don't particularly like that it reminds me of, the Imagine Dragons style singing, who I defend, but I don't put on. I don't put Imagine Dragons on the hi-fi, even though I defend them. Coldplay-ish, almost like millennial woos. But then at the end, there's this like loud cymbals, like crashing on the cymbals and strings, and the melody and the voice is good enough to sort of transcend the sort of rote nature of this dynamics that are being put in. And then of course it cuts out at the very end and it's just voice and piano. And sorry, that's the sound of Toby. Toby is trying to make himself comfortable over on the pillow. Okay, but please don't lick, Toby, because people don't like it when you lick. Okay? So I have to explain the sounds, or else you're going to wonder what's going on here while I'm sitting on the floor. By the way, my back hurts. Can I get an extra like for the fact that I'm recording where my back hurts? Posture. So it cuts out at the end. Toby, I said don't lick. It cuts out at the end where it's just voice and piano and these excellent final lyrics. You only feel it when it's lost. Getting through still has its cost. Quietly it slips through the fingers, love, falling from you drop by drop. So this is like the person who's being held, who's like the water. The whole thing is great. It's playing in my head right now. I want to listen to it again. I've been listening to it all morning with my baby in we have a little baby pit where the baby plays. It's been great. Filling up the whole house. My wife enjoys it. My daughter enjoys it. I enjoy it. Life's a lot better when you're not cynical. Okay, so I'm going to go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. I'm going to go a lot slower on one of these tracks. I'm going to have to take him to task on his interpretation of Dante. De Selby, that's the first track. So here he's very literary, so this is all based on a character called De Selby from Flann O'Brien's book, The Third Policeman. I've never read the book. Unfortunately, I haven't read a lot of... My knowledge of literature in English is actually fairly low because I mostly read in French. I am a French professor. But this whole idea of a character who has been like an unlikable character who it turns out in the end has been living in this mystical world and was sort of dead all along, but it's not like a ooh twist thing, it's a sort of like spiritual way. And this is an interesting, very intertextual conversation that he's having. This is basically a comparative literature album. So he's taking an Irish novel and using it as a prequel leading up to the Divine Comedy. He's basically taking, so if you don't know the structure, Divine Comedy was written by Dante Alighieri, published in 1320, somewhere around there. Long ass time ago, okay? It was written in Italian, which is a really big deal because most things were written in Latin, and that was proof that these new languages had value. Eventually the French would do the same thing, and that's why we have such a great literary tradition that went outside the bounds of... I'm not going to explain to you why Dante is important, but the whole idea is that Dante is also the star of his book. He's the star of his own story, and he's walking through hell with Virgil, who's a long-dead poet from the Roman era. And what's interesting here is that by putting De Selby, this narrator character who worships this philosopher named De Selby, as the protagonist, it's sort of like he's rewriting the Divine Comedy with someone else in the role of Dante. We're now imagining the character from The Third Policeman as the one who's going through hell through the voice and face of Hozier. Hozier. You're so annoyed at me. I don't blame you. You know what? I'm going to look it up. How to pronounce Hozier. Let's hear it. You ready? Oh, wait. I can't hear it. Okay. You ready?
Hozier.
Okay, I can do that. All right. So, Hozier is here. And the whole song is this kind of the opening track. It's this acoustic guitar, quiet and drone. It feels important. It feels like it's the setup of a entire large, meaningful, deep concept album. His voice is very high, and there's a slight Irish accent to it, and talking about being close to God. And then he actually sings in Gaelic or in Irish. Sometimes people call it one, sometimes they call it another. Gets more epic, and then these automated sounds come in. Then it becomes De Selby Part 2, which is a really nice second part to this, where it's like, again, and according to Genius, he apparently wrote letters to his fans, like postcards that he signed, where he talked about the songs, which is like, that's Hozier. That's a very cool thing to do. Props to Hozier. Hozier? That's what I said, right? Hozier. It's really a very cool thing to do. And what he said was this was setting up the idea of it being the prequel. And there's like a pop turn. This song's really cool. I really like the production on here because it's kind of funky. There's like little vocoder sounds in here. Full Imagine Dragons pre-chorus. And then even at times, if you listen, you can hear hints of I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. The third track is called First Time. The last track is called First Light. Lots of firsts that aren't first. Gentle. The opening here actually reminds me a little bit of the band, the one with Robbie Robertson, R.I.P. Bass, guitar, and strings, these low-key drums. Voice comes in whispering, and then becomes much more of just a straight-up pop song about the first time you kissed me. I guess that's the lesbian stuff or something, the way that he's singing about this love relationship. Some part of me must have died when you called me baby. We'll get to it later. In his description, he says that Alex Ryan, who is this bass player, just sent the bass line one day, and then he wrote around it. So when I read that story, I'm like, well, this is cool. Like, that's a lot cooler than, like, if he's just some guy who makes music and has a bunch of hired guns around him who just make music, studio musicians. It sounds like Hozier might actually have a band, like a Hozier band, not just him. And even though I'm not a big fan of Some Part of Me died the first time you called me baby, the fact that he said some part of me must have died the last time you called me baby then makes it more interesting, because then the whole song is about the relationship between like love and your life starting and restarting and death and rebirth, and it's actually a fairly interesting concept in the end. I thought it was a little bit boring, but by changing it at the end, it makes the song much more of an interesting meditation on relationship between big relationships in your life. I said the word relationship 3 times in 20 seconds. Relationships in your life and your life starting over again and dying. Which leads us to Francesca. Now the whole album, if you read the liner notes and all that, he explains how he's going through all 9 levels of hell with varying levels of intentionality, varying levels of success. This is both the least successful and the most successful version. So this is about Canto number 5, written by Lou Bega. Canto number 5, of the Divine Comedy, of the Inferno, of hell. And it's the story of a lovely lady who is married to a very ugly ghoul. And then one day she met his younger brother, who was hot and cool. And the one day when this lady met this brother, and they sat around and they read a book, and they fell in love and kissed each other, and then they got sent to hell, and they lived there forever. Okay? My improv skills are off the charts today. So Francesca is married to an old dude, younger brother. They're reading The Legend of Arthur. If you don't know Arthur and the Knights, it seems like it's a story all about like fighting and all that. No, it's a story about infidelity and like hot guys banging hot women who are married to old dudes. Okay, historically that's the value of Arthurian legend. It's a sort of cuckoldry tale, a tale of forbidden love and courtly love. Okay, so that's the story. Now the problem is, Hozier is insulting Dante. Okay? This song is a complete anachronistic, garbage interpretation of the Divine Comedy. In this song, he says it from the perspective of the man who kissed his older brother's wife, Paolo. If they asked me, put me back in again, I would do it again. Kind of a, it was worth it kind of thing. It's worth the pain of love. The whole song is nice, kind of super churchy organ, more that Imagine Dragons style singing. It actually, in the end, this is the most Weezery sounding song, like this low guitar line and melody. General guitar work all the way through is great. Epic thumping drums on the bridge, the choir in the back. But the problem is, the point of the Inferno is that these people are in constant, absolute, complete torture. Complete torture at all seconds of all time for eternity. Meaning, every breath you've ever taken, Francesca and Paolo were in hell and being tortured. When your grandparents were born, that entire time, thousands of years in the future, millions of years in the future, every single second, they are in the middle of a hurricane in pain. So I thought, just for fun, I would show you what that looks like according to different artists, okay? Before I do that, I want to remind you of Dante's perspective on these people in hell. They are not to be pitied. When Dante, in the book, starts having sympathy for the people who are in hell, like he has a lot of sympathy for Paolo and Francesca, he is insulted by his host Virgil. When he starts spitting on them and kicking them and saying bad things to them, his companion Virgil compliments him. People, according to Dante, people who are in hell chose to be in hell. They wanted to be in hell, or else they would not have done what put them there. There's nothing sympathetic about people in hell. In our current day, we have romantic visions of love. And this song, Francesca, by Hozier, is very romantic in the 19th century sense, the 18th century sense of somebody who is living this great story and I would do anything for love. No, that's not the point. The point is they're idiots, they're sinners, and they deserve the hell that they get. Now, it's interesting. So this is Dante's version of the fifth canto. Dali's version. It's kind of a hard one to read. I don't really understand why he chose that. That could have been Minos. I don't know. Here's Rachel Owens, the Welsh artist. This is her version of it. So these are a little bit more modern, kind of romantic visions in sort of the same way. But what we're going to do now, this is why I go to the gym, is I'm going to show you Gustave Doré. You see this down here? You see how it's chewed up? Toby chewed that up. Toby chewed up my 19th century French version. So he has a lot of illustrations of this story, which I think will be helpful to better help you understand the way this is. You see, they are, good Lord, this book is heavy. They are in a constant hurricane, okay? These lovers are amongst many other lovers. They're just in a giant dog pile of people flying around in the wind, incapable of doing anything. Okay, so there's Dante and Virgil looking at them over the bridge, hive of scum and villainy. And so here they tell the story. And so they see the two lovers actually that we're going to be seeing. There's Francesca with her pierced stomach, and there's Paolo behind her. Okay? Obviously, this is pretty romantic too. We see how lovely they are, how pretty they are. They get even closer to them. Okay? So there's Paolo and Francesca being approached and seen. So they're kind of soloed out from the rest of the people in this horrible hurricane, and they tell their story. I'm like legitimately out of breath from having lived this book. What is interesting about this version is we actually have the moment. So we actually have the moment where they are in love. Okay? So that's them reading the book, being discovered by the brother. There they are. Because of that one moment, that one kiss, they are still down there being tortured forever. So that leaves us with the final moment of Dante's fifth canto, which is them having been soloed out. They go sweeping away with the rest. And you see on the ground there, that's Dante. He's so moved that he faints. He just faints and can't take it anymore because he's so moved by this story of love. So it's understandable. It's understandable that Hozier would take this take because it's in the beginning of the book and Dante is not quite as hardcore understanding of the people that he's seeing. He is not pitiless yet. He needs to be pitiless. In order for him to escape hell and move to purgatory and move to paradise, he has to not have sympathy for these people. Okay? I don't agree with this. I have sympathy for them, but we can't read 14th century texts with 21st century values and expect to get an honest reading. It's unfortunate, you know? You read old stuff and you want to make it like new, but it's just not. The ultimate irony of this whole thing is that the key to the Francesca and Paola story is the book. It's that they're reading. They're reading these stories of Lancelot and Guinevere. There's a whole current in literature of the evils of literature. I mean, we see it all the way throughout all medieval literature. It's part of what Don Quixote is about. It's part of what Madame Bovary is about. That when people read books and they read these romantic tales of great epic love and pain and loss, they get swept up and they want to imitate it. I mean, this goes all the way back to like Plato being upset with theater and too much pathos and all this, like the whole question of like the danger of fiction and how fiction can really hurt you if you try to imitate it. So there's a whole current of anti-fiction that talks about the dangers of fiction. And to a certain extent, that's what this is. She doesn't kiss him because he's handsome or because she's lonely. She kisses him because she read the book. The irony is, this little story about Francesca by Hozier is a terribly romantic story. If I were reading these lyrics, you know, and I was with a handsome fella, whatever, you know, I might get moved. Might be a time to make a move. You know, this is the kind of romantic gobbledygook that leads people to behave in a way that lands them in hell forever, in the 14th century understanding of hell, okay, or in Dante's understanding. So this is a song that inflames the passion that would lead you to go to hell. So if you like Francesca, I'm sorry to say you're going to hell. Okay, let's get to the rest of the track. Okay, now Bo is licking. Bo. I've got two dogs here. If I had Rings of Hell, my YouTuber Ring of Hell would be recording videos and having the dogs just licking the whole time. We get to the song I Carrion. So we're still in this intertextual mode, more of an acoustic mode. I like him when he's acoustic. His voice sings these lines, allow the ground to find its brutal way to meet. Another allusion, you know, this to the story of Icarus, which is probably a little bit better known to most than the Divine Comedy is these days. Very charming, nice sounds in the back. But then again, we have this weird sort of anti-reading of the story. So the story of Icarus is that he flew too close to the sun, right? He has this technology that's given to him by his father Daedalus, and he flies, and even though he's just supposed to fly a little bit, that's not enough. It's not enough to fly a little bit. He has to fly higher and higher, and he's punished for his inability to appreciate, for his ambition. It's a moral story, okay? The same way that Dante is telling you, don't kiss your husband's brother, okay? Don't do it. You're going to end up in hell in a hurricane, okay? The same basic idea. This is like making Icarus cool. If anything could fall at all, it's the world that falls away with me. This is sort of another song that's basically about it being worth it. It's worth it. All of the dysregulation of love is worth it. Eat Your Young. According to him, this is the third circle of hell. This works fairly well. I'm not gonna lift up the book and show you what gluttony looks like in Dore's version. But this is interesting, because he also said in an interview that this might, or I read somewhere, this might also be a reference to Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, where it's a very well-known story, especially in Ireland, where the solution to all the poor people in Ireland is if you just eat babies. It's kind of a satire. And this whole thing is like this song about how we eat our young, and we do. I can tell you as an old person, that's the basic policy of most countries, is just eat young people, So I like this idea. I like tying it into gluttony. The music is a little this kind of like faux soul area, which we'll see. I'm not a big fan of in general that he does, kind of genre hopping. But I like this idea of eat your young in this kind of political way. Then we get The Damage Gets Done by Brandi Carlile. Hey, Hozier, this is just Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Oops. Oops, you did a plagiarism. The shuffling drums, the jangly guitars, what? And it's also, it's sort of like Everyone Wants to Rule the World mixed with a little bit of Today by Smashing Pumpkins. This features Brandi Carlile, who I don't really know, but I love the way they sing together. He says this is about the fourth circle of hell, greed. I read the lyrics. I read his explanation. It doesn't work. It's okay. Listen, hey, Hozier. If Hozier had actually done an album and was like slavishly trying to illustrate all 9 circles of hell, it wouldn't be that interesting. It's more interesting that he's writing about what he wants to write about and then post hoc trying to fit it into this superstructure. It's better. It's better this way. But let's not pretend like this really works with greed, because this is a song about remembering when you were young and poor and you were sleeping on the floor and you felt like a millionaire. Being reckless and young is not how the damage gets done. It's an interesting point. It's true. Most of the damage in the world is not done by young, dumb people. But also, I think young, dumb people do need to be held to account. There's a lot of behavior and a lot of thoughts that is actually quite harmful by young, dumb people. There is this funny thing where on one level, it's sort of so saccharine that I want to not listen to it and make fun of it. On the other side, there's like this, like Brandi Carlile's voice is used in like this ghostly way where it's almost like she's swirling around in the back. It almost sort of reminds me of that swirling hurricane of lovers in the Circle of Lust. So that's interesting. And then we get to Son of Nyx. This is amazing. This is this amazing song. This was like this great break where there was all these songs after song, and then here it's an instrumental track. And this got this low piano with like hiss on it, and these unsettling notes on top. And it turns out I read the story of this, and this is quite beautiful. Part of the reason I'm sitting on the floor, that guy, Alex Ryan, his dad died, and he wrote this song about it. And so this is a song about that, about his dad dying. And as somebody who very clearly is not even close to over mourning for his father, I can really relate to it. And it's this really beautiful piece. It's this really beautiful moment. It happens to be his dad's name was Nick, and so then Nyx's son was Charon, Charon, who like ferries Dante across the river Styx in the underworld, and there's great female voices. It's almost continuing that ghostly feeling that we had with the previous song, with just these things swirling around. It's really great. And then we get to All Things End. Make it stop, sucker. Oh my God, this is the worst. Oh, this is like that Take Me to Church song, falsetto and claps and doing like, seriously, he's trying so hard to sound like Bill Withers. And this is the problem. If you try so hard to sound like somebody who's more soulful and more interesting than you are, and you succeed, it's worse than if you fail, because you just sound like a terrible pale imitation. I don't know. I have a conflictual relationship with a lot of Irish musicians. Like, I remember that movie, The Commitments, just like loving that movie and then watching it again and just sort of hating it. Just like, stay off, get your hands off of all this great music. But it's a good movie. But I don't know. I really like Van Morrison, except for everything he said for the past 30 years. So I get it, because Van Morrison's a great example of how you can be an Irish person and you can take your lived experience, which is often very close to the lived experience, or close in meaningful ways to the lived experience of African Americans in America, and make soul music in a way that is not completely inauthentic. If I started making soul music, it'd be like, but this song, this gospel bit at the end, yuck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Hate it. But then the next song's great. To Someone from a Warm Climate. With this piano and aching vocals. It's just letting his voice do all the work. My wife loves crooners. Not driving crooners, just regular crooners. And he just is able to sing so well. You can hear the sound of the stand-up bass being played. This is very soulful without feeling derivative at all. And the whole lyrics are great. It's all about how awesome it is living in a cold climate. A joy hard learned in winter is the warming of the bed. You'd shake for a minute there, move your legs, wrap your blanket over and keep your head within. Let the breath heat the air until you feel it getting in. It's like, it's true. I've lived in Santa Barbara and I've lived in Rochester, New York. And in some ways it's better to live in Rochester, New York, because you get to get warm. When you live in a warm climate, you never get to get warm. You just are warm. And getting warm is a beautiful thing. This is a great bittersweet piece of poetry. Remember how you're pissed at me for not liking the last song? I'm giving this song way more love than I dislike that other song, okay? Has this Gaelic word, uisafar, the feel of coldness only water brings. Interesting idea there. And then the next song is one of these songs that's basically just him by himself, butchered tongue, piano and voice, more political heart. As a language teacher, I am absolutely in love with this song, because it's about the loss of language through colonialism and how that loss of language is symbolic of a loss of greater culture, because language and culture are intimately linked, and the fact that we live in a monolinguistic hellscape of English only everywhere we are is a great loss of culture and intercultural competence, which we need to fight. Learn another language. If you do not speak another language, learn another language. It is a moral imperative. Okay? Just gotta say that every once in a while. I don't care if it's Gaelic. I don't care if it's Italian. I don't care if it's Spanish, Swahili, Urdu. Learn it. I don't care if you're not even good at it. Okay? But give yourself to it. Anyways, so it's all about these words, these place names that still exist after the people themselves have been exterminated. I grew up in a state called Massachusetts. Oh, okay. What's that? What does that mean? What does Narragansett mean? What does Penobscot mean? I mean, there's all these places that I've just seen, and it's this butchered tongue, meaning that it's like a tongue, a language that has been literally butchered. There's also a whole other aspect of this, and I learned this according to Genius, that's about the Wexford Rebellion in Ireland, 1798, when British forces suppressed Irish forces, often cutting off body parts, including tongues, putting a hat called pitch, was like hot tar, and then they'd set it on fire and people's heads would burn. Very terrible stuff. Buried without scalp in the shattered bedrock of our home. So this is great, because he's taking on this question of Gaelic, of Irish identity and oppression, but he's making it universal by talking about places in Mississippi and places in Australia, right? Kookaburra, right? Isn't that a place in Australia? Or is that no, that's a bird. Okay, Canberra, right? Canberra, right? That's an Aboriginal name, and but where are the people? What's happened to them? So as a language teacher, I really appreciate this link between language and culture, and how extermination of one is the result of an extermination of other. And if you don't believe me, go to Spain. Anything but make it stop, sucker. MISS. Oh, I hate this song. It gets some kind of fake ass Paul Simon and mandolin and this howling high voice skip. He says it's about fraud. The Circle of Hell, it's about fraud. Yeah, this whole song's a fraud. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But hey, the next song's good. Abstract, psychopomp, voice and piano. It's all about seeing a dead animal as a kid. It's a very great poetic experience. You hear in the background, Bo is now snoring, which is better than licking. I love the tone of the second part. These drums just get very heavy and these sad lyrics. And it's not really about Dante. Again, it's kind of a stretch. He says somewhere that it's about the eighth circle of hell, but it's not. But that's okay. Next track is called Unearth. And again, like I dismissed a couple of the songs, but this is a great one. Really just him. And he's playing, it must be a Stratocaster guitar or a Stratocaster clone. It's like a little ditty. He's playing all the instruments here. Reminds me even a little bit of John Frusciante, but that's going to piss off John Frusciante fans because those people are crazy. They love John Frusciante. But it's all about, it's not about being alone, sha-la-la. It ain't about an empty home. Just beautiful, gorgeous lyrics. And he's sort of making reference to where you were held frozen like an angel to me. Even though I accused Hozier of having Bradpittitis, I don't think he does. I watched this interview where he's talking about Dante and this album, and he does actually have a fundamental understanding of Dante. Even though he provided an intentional cross-reading of Francesca, that's fine. I mean, you could argue that Dore did as well. I mean, it's hard not to hear that story and feel pity for them in the state that we're in now, right? In the 21st century. But he really talks about how the devil is a victim of hell. He's not the king of hell, which is a thing that people just lose. He's like frozen. It's the coolest thing. Hell is not hot in the center. Hell is frozen. And it's frozen because Satan's got these big wings and he's trying to get out, but he's totally stuck. It's very weird. It's like fascinating geography. There's all these great maps in this edition that I read. I see not there. Let me see if I can. I should have done this before. But there's like this really cool kind of geography of hell. Where's that picture? There's a really good picture in here of. Oh yeah. So there's Satan. Okay. Like that's where Satan is. He's frozen. So, I like that, held frozen like an angel to me. There are people who are frozen near Satan, who are like stuck together. Then the album ends on a happy note. First light, church-like chorus, harpsichord, sounding like, almost reminds me of the song Dream On by Aerosmith, which is a good song. Fight me. In an epic, similar way, in the way it builds up. One bright morning changes everything. Another great big drum bit. It all kind of grows and gets bigger and bigger. And it has a very nice ending. And it's about light. And it's about getting out. And the thing that's sad is that people read just the Inferno and then they don't get to the happy part where he gets out and goes up to heaven and is in light. But it is fundamentally a positive story because it's about how to avoid going to hell and about how to enjoy your life and how to live your life. And basically the worst sin is in not appreciating your life. Like that's what Dante's sin is in here. He's very consciously talking about like his complaining and his feeling of worthlessness and all that. Like that's his real thing. And like the real thing you have to do is live your life and live it fully. That sounds anachronistic, but I think it's actually true. I think it's a very good reading, or I think it's the most neutral reading I can provide of Dante. So this album, I think, is about that too. Living life and loving. All right, these are my Patreons. I'm probably going to buy this album, but I'm just going to give it to my daughter because I think she really likes it, and her friends like it too. And it is important when there is things that are appreciated by teenage girls that we take them seriously. We take them just as seriously as Death Grips. Oh, Death Grips. Hozier. All right? You hear me? Death Grips. Hozier. What are you going to do now? Huh? Oh, you're so edgy you can't listen to Hozier? I'm so edgy I can listen to Hozier. Hozier? All right. Well, I'll see you Hosers later. Until next time, for Toby, he's over there. You can lick now. Go ahead. Lick all you want, Toby. Bo, you just keep on snoring. All right. There's the camera.